administrative region. Recently, we see the national security law has been heatedly discussed. How do you understand the necessity of a national security law for Hong Kong SAR? Why is it imperative for Hong Kong?
And thank you for the interview. Over the past year, we have seen a lot of politically motivated social disturbance, violence, and riots in Hong Kong. These activities have made Hong Kong an unsafe place to live and to do business. To help Hong Kong and to keep Hong Kong healthy, restoring law and order to Hong Kong is absolutely necessary. Establishing a national security law in Hong Kong is both necessary and timely now.
You mentioned the urgency of doing this now, so could you please elaborate more about the timing?
We noticed that the rioters are declaring time revolution and Hong Kong independence when they cause damage to public and private properties. If their efforts in debilitating the government and separating Hong Kong from China is not stopped immediately, their power will continue to grow and eventually may cause more permanent damage to Hong Kong. It is like a disease. If you do not treat the disease early, it is difficult to save the world later. A national security law is like a medicine to cure this disease now.
Then what legal loopholes will be closed or tightened by the national security law? As we see many separatists or criminals in Hong Kong are in panic.
At present, without a national security law, the rioters can commit crime against the country and society with little or no cost. You can also see the interference by foreign powers in the support of these rioters. They do this without any fear of being caught. At present, there's no law to intimidate such activities. With the announcement of the placement of the national security law, the separatists and criminals are in panic now because their activities will be clearly determined to be illegal, and they can be put in jail for a long time. Without such law, these people are free to advocate or organize separation activities against the country. This law will intimidate the criminals and protect ordinary citizens. It will bring back peace and prosperity to the society.
Hong Kong operates with a high degree of autonomy. Will the law make a difference on that? And also on the one country, two systems principle, as some Hong Kong residents concerned about their rights and freedoms?
This law will not interfere with the high degree of autonomy in Hong Kong because it only deals with the national security issues, which most people have nothing to do with. It will, in fact, help to make one country, two systems principle work better. Only when our one country is safe, our two systems can work and prosper. Without this law, some separatists can easily organize violent activities trying to make Hong Kong separate from China. That will make the end of peace and prosperity of Hong Kong. I'm pretty sure that history will prove this law is a cornerstone of Hong Kong's stability and prosperity in the future.
What happened in Hong Kong last year is unprecedented. The violence on the street in Hong Kong jeopardizes the sovereignty and the national security of the country and undermines Hong Kong's international financial positions. Will the law turn the tide? How will the law help social stability and business environment in Hong Kong?
Well, with the national security law in place, the cause of committing crime and using violence as a means to cause social disturbance becomes high enough that many criminals will be intimidated not to easily break the law. That will give opportunity for the society to get back to stability and people to get back to normal life. The business community is most concerned with a stable environment for good business practice. This law will ensure a safe and stable environment for free trade and good international business. Hong Kong is already the number one free trade city in the world. It was announced recently, the announcement for the listing of the whole world on the number one, number two, number three, and all this ranking of the free trade for the cities. And I think now Hong Kong is number one, and with this law in place, it will become even better. In the long run, I think Hong Kong will be an excellent place for all business investors.
As the former president of Hong Kong Baptist University, you've been devoted to education and students' exchanges between Chinese mainland and the Hong Kong region. But what we've seen last year, many radicals and rioters are college students. What do you make of the reasons? Do you think something should be done in the education sector in Hong Kong?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I think young people are of high ideal and have strong passion. They are willing to sacrifice themselves for their belief. This is universally true and historically consistent. In modern history of China, we have seen young people under the leadership of Dr. Sun Yat-sen overthrowing the Qing dynasty. We have seen the May 4 youth movement. We have seen the communist revolution against the KMT and the Japanese invasion. In more recent history, we have seen the Cultural Revolution. In the United States, in the 1960s to 70s, the anti-war activities by young people forced the Nixon administration to seize the Vietnam War. All of these were done by young people. I must say that the young people's pursuit of an ideal of fairness and a better world is praiseworthy. However, because young people lack real-life experience and deep understanding of the society, they can be misled by people who have plans to manipulate the young people to do things for their selfish purpose. The Cultural Revolution is a typical example. Therefore, putting young people's passion on a good path is very important for education. Unfortunately, in Hong Kong, many teachers in primary and secondary schools have strong bias in their political views. In order to mislead students to their political camp, they don't even mind twisting facts to give students wrong impression of history and reality. For example, recently, a primary school teacher in Hong Kong taught his students the history of the Opium War. In order to make the British look good, he said that the Opium War was started because the Chinese are taking opium drugs, and the British thought that was not good, and therefore they waged a war in order for anti-drug activity. Essentially are saying that the British are doing anti-drug and the Chinese are corrupted, therefore this war is righteous for the British. But obviously this is a lie, because we all know the Opium War was started because the British wanted to sell more opium to China against the will of the government of the Qing dynasty. Now, Hong Kong will have no future if our teachers are not honest. I think the most important thing now is that we need good educators for good education system. We need to train good teachers, train honest and patriotic young teachers, so that our younger generation can be taught by these honest people. A reform is necessary because, for example, Hong Kong has some teaching material that can be written by the teacher at his own will. And this would make it very difficult for students because there's no standard format, and or more than the format, is the thought of the teacher can be sometimes biased. That would make it very difficult for the students to learn. We must teach the teachers at the same time have a system that is under the law and very good for the education sector. Right now, I think reform is a necessity, but it must be done right. I think at the turnover of the sovereignty in 1997, we made a mistake by introducing some courses at which the teachers can do whatever they want.
That was co-worker Anna talking to Chen Xingzhi, CPPCC member from Hong Kong and former president of Hong Kong Baptist University. on the issue of a new draft legislation on national security for Hong Kong. And this interview was done through the phone as required by Covid-19 prevention and control measures surrounding the two sessions. Also, coronavirus is bringing a new topic to the two sessions this year. Public health legislation is a trending topic. Lawmakers are discussing revision to the wildlife protection law, the law on the prevention and control of infectious diseases, the frontier health and quarantine law, the emergency response law, among many others. And they're expected to review and approve the country's biosecurity law within this year, and will try to expedite revising the wildlife protection law in the hope of submitting the revision for the review in the latter half of the year. The coronavirus has brought tremendous pressure on healthcare systems almost everywhere it goes. In China, the situation was harsh in the early days in Wuhan. The local hospitals were overwhelmed by patients who may or may not have been affected. Medical professionals from the rest of the country rushed to the central Chinese city to help out. But this public health emergency has served as a reminder that there are still shortfalls in the country's healthcare system. This year, at the two sessions, Chinese national lawmakers are calling for better training for community general practitioners to help improve the country's response to infectious diseases in the future. Huang Yue has more.
A major problem highlighted during the COVID-19 outbreak in the Chinese city of Wuhan is the scarcity of skilled community general doctors. Official data shows the country now has only 2 general practitioners per 10,000 population. This is compared to nearly 8 in the United Kingdom 5 years ago. Lawmaker Chen Xing from Nanjing First Hospital suggests the problem could be a result of Chinese people's long-term preference for big hospitals.
They were concerned about is whether the primary care doctor or family doctor, whether they are capable or they are available. They are capable to provide a high standard medical service. The big hospitals are so crowded in outpatient clinics, but the community hospital or local medical clinics review patients all whole day. It's kind of waste there.
By 2018, the number of people receiving general doctor training in China was about 300,000, and only half were finally qualified for the job. In the same year, China pledged to improve the training of doctors and offer more incentives for the sector. So far, many medical schools have opened related classes and provided students with intern opportunities at large hospitals. Meanwhile, legislator Li Weibing from Huaxi Hospital of Sichuan University proposes more anti-epidemic knowledge to be added to the training.
We are
now facing a scarcity in two kinds of talent, general practitioners and disease prevention staff. We need to change the curriculum system of medical education. More knowledge about infectious disease prevention and control should be added to the training of general practitioners.
China is striving to increase the number of general doctors per 10,000 to no less than 5 by 2023. As part of that effort, the country has decided to expand the enrollment of graduate students pursuing a master's degree in public health and preventive medicine this year.
That was Huang Yue on the legislator's motion to train more general practitioners. You're listening to China Radio International. This is our special coverage on the two sessions. Today, Wednesday, May 27th, U.S. billionaire Elon Musk's SpaceX is scheduled to launch 2 American astronauts to the International Space Station. This makes SpaceX the first private company to launch humans into orbit and a milestone in the history of commercial space programs. Coincidentally, at the two sessions, a CPPCC member is putting out a proposal to develop space tourism. Fu Yu has more.
Currently, investments for China's aerospace industry mainly come from the country's government. China has been encouraging private companies to participate in the industry since 2016. The number of commercial aerospace enterprises reached 200 last year, but most of these companies' programs are still government projects. National Space Science Center Director Wu Ji is a member of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. He says developing space tourism will help commercialize the aerospace industry.
If we open our services to the general public, like tourism, then we will have another sector of money coming in from other parts, which is a more commercialized market.
Space tourism has very promising prospects. American businessman Dennis Tito became the world's first space tourist in 2001 when he paid $20 million to travel to the International Space Station. Virgin Galactic is charging £200,000 or about $243,000 to launch people into space. Nearly 600 volunteers have signed up for the trip. Wu Ji says such trips will not only help generate profit for the industry, but also change people's perspective on the universe.
The people who has been there will have a space passion. They were looking at the Earth. The Earth is the atmosphere is so tiny, little thin atmosphere, and if you go to the moon, looking back at the Earth is just planet. So once you are there, they will have a more humanity passion.
Wu has submitted a proposal on supporting the development of space tourism to the CPPCC for deliberation. He suggests that the government implement favorable policies to help with the growth of private space companies that target space travels, and the conventional tourism and finance industry get involved to invigorate space tourism.
That was Fu Yu reporting on a CPPCC proposal to develop space tourism. China started encouraging private investment and private business in space technology since a state council decision in 2014. And in the following years, dozens of private firms have entered the commercial space industry, mostly focused on the production and launch of satellites and rockets. They're now able to shoot multiple satellites the size of a shoebox into space in one go. It might take a while before the private sector has the capacity to support space tourism, but some policy support certainly won't hurt their enthusiasm. Meanwhile, on the national front, China's Chang'e 4 probe has survived more than 500 Earth days on the far side of the moon while conducting a scientific exploration of the Virgin Territory. The last satellite of China's Beidou navigation satellite system and first Mars mission probe will be launched in the following months, and China's space station is scheduled to be completed around 2022. To learn more about this, my colleague Goanna, whom we've heard from before, spoke to Wu Ji, CPPCC member and director of National Space Science Center, to talk about Wu's proposal to promote space tourism and about the overall development of China's space science. Let's hear this.
Dr. Wu, how do you assess the overall development of China's space science? Where are we now compared to other leading countries in the realm?
We are still the beginners. The most advanced country in the world in space science is the United States, and after that is the European. There's an agency called European Space Agency. They have 25 members, so they are organizing all these 25 members to do a space science program altogether. So if you see Europe as a whole, it's also quite good, quite strong. And then next, we probably will have Japan. If you count in the investment, Japan spends more than China on space science. So we are still at the beginning. But since space science is trying to discover new science to prove new theories, so it is everything you do, it must be first. So although we are very small, we are just at the beginning. What we have done is still quite significant. So we are one of the new players now.
Could you elaborate a little bit more about the achievements that China has made?
Since 2011, we have 4 science programs. And after that, start from 2017, we initiated another 5 programs. So the first 4 programs has all been launched, and they are having a very good result. For example, the dark matter detector is making a very successful measurement on very high energy particles from the universe. So then we are making a spectrum, a curve, according to the different particles, and according to the physics, there should be a standard curve. But what we have discovered is the curve is different from the theory. So it's several papers, important papers, has been published on quite good journals, including Nature and Science.
We see socio-economic sectors, etc., are affected by the unexpected COVID-19 outbreak. How about the space science sector in China? Has the spread of the virus brought any challenges on China's space science?
At the moment, there are some delays because of the lockdown, and we cannot actually, only until this month, we can travel. Before, it is very difficult to travel. When you travel, you have to stay 14 days in quarantine when you come back, and even when you arrive there, they ask you to stay in quarantine. So it is difficult to travel before the end of April. So there are some delays, and the ongoing programs and the development, we need components, we need manufacturers, and all these factories had some delays after the Spring Festival. So in general, there are roughly some 1 month, somehow 2 months, maximum is 2 months delayed for our ongoing development.
Your proposal this year calls for the establishment of a Space Science 2035, a major science and technology project. So could you please tell us more about the project? Why is it crucial for the development of China's aerospace industry?
We are right now under a space science program, which is one part of the budget of Chinese Academy of Sciences. And this kind of budget cannot sustain more than 5 years. So every 5 years we have to apply another budget again. So this is according to the 5 years budget plans of the country. But this is not very good for space science. We need a long-term plan. We need to call for new proposals, and we need to give money for them for pre-studies and before they really go to the engineering phase. So each program may last more than 10 years. So that's why we propose to include the space science program into the large national programs in the big budget up to 2035. So once this is included, we will be no worry for another 15 years. Then we can make long-term plans and even larger programs, because larger programs takes much longer time to prepare. So all this will change the total scenario, and the research force and the engineers can be more stable. We are really expecting that more stable budget.
You also called for the development of a space tourism. When do you think it will be commercialized in China? How will it benefit other industries?
Yes, it is a new field. It's called the new space. And what we are doing, including space science, is old space. So old space means the budget, the investors are government. So our customer is government. And this investment is limited. It never go very high because government doesn't have such so much money to pay for space science, or even for space programs. So it's a limited budget. But if we open our service to the general public, like tourism, then we will have another sector of money coming from other parts, which is a more commercialized market. So once we have that market, the space activity will have two wheels. One is governmental, one is commercial, public investment. So tourism is one of the very bright direction for space activities, because space is not only for travel, not only for fun. The people who have been there will have a space passion. They were looking at the Earth. The Earth is the atmosphere is so thin, little thin atmosphere, and if you go to the moon, looking back at the Earth is just planet. So once you are there, the tourism will be changed. Their passion, they will have more humanity passion. So like what we have for COVID-19 now, is you see a lot of governors, they don't really have that passion. We need that passion to come to this kind of influence for the whole human being. So space tourism is not only for market, for money. It will totally change the mentality of human beings.
Like
a few astronauts will not change it. So only if you have more people, 10,000 of people, 100,000 of people to go to the space as a tourism, the mentality of the human beings will be changed. This will open the field, so there will be a very large market. At the moment, one travel in the U.S. they have some company has already started this. It's only 20 minutes microgravity space cost 200,000 pounds. So the one ticket is only one ticket. So if you launch 3, 5, 10 vehicles like this, spaceship like this, you will make a lot of money. So the market value is very high. So of course the government will get taxed and people will love to do it, and the industry will benefit from the reusable space vehicles, and all this will be totally different from the government paid space, which is old space. So we are looking at the new space.
As we know, not long ago, the United States has announced the establishment of the U.S. Space Force. So how do you view the necessity of building such an army? What's China's stance on this?
I don't. My personal view is it's a wrong direction, because space belongs to the whole human being. Space doesn't have boundary there. So if you open a military competition there, or a military race, space race there, it will cost a lot of money for all the countries participate. As far as I know, China will never participate in this kind of campaign. So it is like the space race between the Soviet Union and the United States 20 years ago. USSR has been collapsed because of this race. So you have to pay a lot of money, and this is not a win-win. This is a lose game. Both parties, all parties will lose. So this is not the right direction. If the U.S. want to do that, China will never participate. So let them do it.
That was Joanna speaking to Wu Ji, CPPCC member and director of National Space Science Center for China's science projects and more. You're listening to China Radio International. This is our special coverage on the 2 sessions. Now, at the 2 sessions, there's been a tally on the work of NPC deputies and CPPCC members like Chen Xingzi and Wu Ji. On the part of the top legislature, the NPC Standing Committee in 2019 adopted and processed 491 motions from the deputies. 8,160 deputy suggestions were assigned to 1,193 government departments or public institutions for implementation or feedback. So far, 71.3% of them have been handled. On the part of the top political advisory body, the CPPCC members in 2019 put forward 5,488 proposals, 4,089 of which were adopted and implemented by 175 government departments or public institutions. Notably, CPPCC Standing Committee member Zhu Yongxin brought in a proposal based on the work of a teenager. During a model CPPCC extracurricular activity, Li Shuyi from a middle school in Xi'an proposed a rating system for online games to protect the country's minors. Li and her team came up with the proposal after doing a survey on the gaming habits of people of different age groups. The proposal called for compliance by gaming service providers and enforcement by relevant government institutions. Li and her team also envisioned a platform that could calculate all the time minors spend on various games, so there's no running from one game to another to cheat the anti-addiction setting. The proposal caught the attention of CPPCC Standing Committee member Zhu Yongxin, who worked with Li to adapt the proposal for the model CPPCC, and they adapt the proposal for the real CPPCC. Zhu believes that the teenage researchers had a unique advantage in getting to know the thinking of their peers. The national legislators are giving a final deliberation on a draft civil code. We expect to see the legal document passed tomorrow at the closing ceremony of the NPC session. Containing 1,260 articles, the draft is the most extensive legislation in China, as well as the only legislation officially called a code. A civil code is an encyclopedia of the people's lives. It is the most important law covering the private sphere and deemed to be the civil constitution of modern society. China's draft civil code consists of 7 books, including general provisions and sections on the property, contracts, personality rights, marriage and family, inheritance, and torts. A professor from Renmin University of China says incorporating personality rights provisions into an independent section is a major innovation. The personality rights section covers stipulations on a person's right to their life, body, health, name, image, reputation, and privacy. It provides for regulating studies related to human genes, banning illegal entries, spying on and filming in others' private spaces. Obviously people are buying drones everywhere, and also a number of additional hot topics of public interest. There's also a legal mechanism to protect online virtual property. With the boom in internet users in China, online virtual property has gradually played an important role in people's lives. Statistics show the number of internet users in China reached 731 million at the end of December 2016, including 695 million mobile users. Compared with traditional property, virtual property can only exist in the virtual world. Meng Qian, an associate professor of the law school of the Beijing Institute of Technology, said the display and transformation of virtual property is different from how traditional property is handled in the real world. One example would be a gamer who may have accrued some kind of asset while playing games in the virtual world, and they will have the right to sell the asset to other players in the same space. And a lot of these discussions concerning the value behind their account, the gaming account, should be included in discussions in the civil code, of course. Our talk show program, Roundtable, had an extended discussion on the civil code on Tuesday. So if you'd like to know more, you can check it out on Apple Podcast at Roundtable China or on our Easy FM app. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang presented the government work report to the national legislators on the opening day of the NPC session. In a departure from the common practice, this year the government is not setting a specific target on GDP growth. Instead, the focus will be placed on keeping the coronavirus at bay and blunting its impact on small businesses. In the government work report, the Premier promised a more proactive and impactful fiscal policy. The deficit to GDP ratio this year is projected at more than 3.6%, with a deficit increase of 1 trillion yuan over last year. On top of this, 1 trillion yuan of government bonds for Covid-19 control will also be issued. These are extraordinary measures for an unusual time. And if you do the math, that'll make a total of 2 trillion yuan, which will be transferred in full to local governments. A special transfer payments mechanism will be set up to ensure that funds go straight to prefecture and county governments and directly benefit businesses and people. These funds should be primarily used to ensure employment, meet basic living needs, and protect market entities. This includes giving support to cut taxes and fees, reduce rents and interest on loans, and increase consumption and investment. Premier Li stressed that government funds are public in nature and that no such funds are allowed to be withheld or diverted for non-designated uses. Meanwhile, China has unveiled a new tax reduction plan, which is expected to support small enterprises that are struggling to recover from the fallout of Covid-19. Zhou Fang reports.
According to this year's government work report, the new plan aims to cut taxes and fees for corporations by 2.5 trillion yuan, or $350 billion, up 25% from last year's target. The current tax and fee cuts, which are in place until June, will be extended to the end of this year. The extension includes exempting small firms from paying endowment insurance fees, unemployment and employment injury insurances. Wu Naijun is the Deputy Dean of Employment and Social Security Research Center at Tsinghua University. He expects the new policy to help strengthen confidence.
The policy will help small and medium-sized enterprises to get through difficulties on the capital chain and will also help stabilize employment without large-scale layoffs. Once employment is stabilized, a certain level of consumption will be stabilized, and this will show up consumer confidence in the future.
To ease the burden on enterprises, China has promised a 3-month rent exemption for companies renting state-owned properties and to extend the 5% reduction of electricity fees for industrial and commercial enterprises through the end of this year. Yang Chenjiang with the China Democratic National Construction Association suggests it may be the right time to further improve the business environment.
We must secure market entities and companies' enthusiasm for operations. We must ensure people's livelihoods and the normal functioning of society. Only by achieving that can we lay a solid foundation for a stable development in the future.
In 2019, China's tax and fee cuts totaled over 2.3 trillion yuan. The new 2.5 trillion yuan reduction plan, plus issuance of over 3.7 trillion yuan worth of special local government bonds, is expected to bolster the country's GDP growth for this year by at least 2%.
That was Zhou Fan on China's tax reduction policies to shore up small businesses and stabilize employment in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. On the sideline of the two sessions, China's State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi held a press conference to present China's foreign policy stance. A lot of its questions from Chinese and foreign reporters were surrounded on the COVID-19. Wang said that the novel coronavirus is the common enemy of the mankind. Cooperation and solidarity are the most powerful weapon to prevail over the pandemic. On China-U.S. relations, the minister called for peaceful coexistence and cooperation.
China is willing to work with the U.S. side to build a coordinated, cooperative, and stable bilateral relationship in the spirit of non-conflict, non-confrontation, mutual respect, and win-win cooperation. In the meantime, China will safeguard its own sovereignty, territorial integrity, legitimate development rights and interests, and dignity that its people have worked hard to win.
The minister also calls on the two countries to work together to fight against the novel coronavirus outbreak.
First, China and the U.S. should share experiences in fighting the pandemic and learn from each other to boost their responses to the outbreak. They should also follow the expectations of global society to take part in and promote multilateral cooperation against COVID-19 and play a positive role in the global response.
He says the two sides should begin as early as possible to coordinate and communicate over policies to mitigate COVID-19's impact on both economies and the world economy. Wang Yi is also urging American politicians to stop attacking China's virus response, as well as filing unwarranted lawsuits for compensation. On China-Russia relations, Wang said China will stabilize cooperation in energy and step up collaboration with Russia in emerging sectors such as e-commerce, biomedicine, and the cloud economy. Talking about relations with Europe, Wang said the two sides shall explore mutually beneficial cooperation in the areas of connectivity, environmental protection, digital economy, and artificial intelligence. Hailing China-Japan ROK cooperation as a model of virus fight, Wang advocated raising the level of regional economic cooperation by upholding free trade, cutting tariffs, opening up markets, and tapping new growth engines in health, intelligent manufacturing, and 5G. And to help African countries to tackle the grim situation, China pledged to reduce the debt obligations for African countries and provide further support to those countries in extreme predicament. China has shipped medical supplies to nearly 150 countries and 4 international organizations to meet their immediate needs, It has exported 56.8 billion masks and 250 million protective suits, among other provisions. Though the virus is profoundly changing the world, it will not reverse the trend of globalization, nor will it undermine China's resolve in advancing international cooperation. That's according to China's State Counsel and Wang Yi as he answered a question from the reporters. Also responding to a question on the Belt and Road, Wang said the impact of COVID-19 on B&R cooperation is temporary and limited, and the cooperation will be strengthened. During the past 7 years, China's goods trade with B&R countries surpassed $7.8 trillion, and its direct investment in those countries was over $110 billion. You're listening to China Radio International. This is our special program on the two sessions. In a moment, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference will convene its final meeting this year, and also the chairperson of the CPPCC National Committee and Standing Committee will give a speech to give the concluding remarks. You're listening to China Radio International. Domestic consumption accounts for an increasingly bigger proportion in the Chinese economy, but we also live in an increasingly more globalized world, and no country can turn the tide on the economic impact of COVID-19. And this is why many manufacturers in China are looking for solutions in the face of a supply shortage as the COVID-19 pandemic disrupts the global supply chain. The global spread of COVID-19 has brought about increasing uncertainties to the industrial and supply chains for Chinese enterprises, which have so far resumed regular work and production, but are threatened by a shortage of supplies. Many of these enterprises are being forced to look for alternatives to tackle challenges they encounter. CEO of Lenovo Group Yang Yuanqing says companies should accelerate the transformation and upgrade process of the industrial and supply chain. And I quote, he said, "We should utilize small technologies to make Chinese companies more competitive in the global market and reaffirm China's status as the global manufacturing center." He suggests that we support both globalization and localization for enterprises to merge China's industrial chain with markets in order to make companies more resilient. China has been trying to strike a balance between epidemic prevention and work resumption to maintain the stability of the global supply chain and minimize the impact of the pandemic on the global economy. Guaranteeing stable industrial and supply chains is among the key points emphasized in this year's government work report. Gao Liyun, a researcher on global economy and politics from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, says companies should evaluate themselves from a global perspective under the new circumstances. And I quote, "Big companies should focus on planning and place manufacturing of components and parts where efficiency is the highest. Medium-sized companies with strong research capabilities can differentiate themselves with their biggest advantages. Small and micro-sized enterprises can leverage their comparative advantages and make high-quality products. China has all the industrial categories classified by the United Nations. It also ranks first in terms of output in nearly half of the over 500 major industrial products in the world." There you go. This is our special report on China's one of China's most important political events of the year. Each year, usually in the month of March, Chinese top legislators and top political advisors would convene in the capital city of Beijing. That's when they will host an extended sessions to discuss important state affairs. But unfortunately this year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, that's affecting the world at large. Obviously, it has the impact on China's political agenda as well. I think in February, the NPC Standing Committee made an announcement and also a decision to reschedule this year's annual sessions. And as a result, we are postponing the important political event until the month of May. Right now, these NPC deputies and CPPCC members are discussing some of the most important events here in this country. and this includes talking and deliberation on the government work report. Obviously, the government has to report to the top legislature, and therefore each year at the very beginning of the NPC session, the Premier usually presents the government work report to the NPC deputies, who are essentially lawmakers. So each year in the work report, the Premier will look at what they've done in the past year, and will also look forward to the future. Typically, like I said earlier, a lot of the reporters, especially foreign reporters, when they're covering the two sessions, they pay a lot of attention to a growth target that's generally set in the government work report. And for the past few years, China has been engaged in economic restructuring process, and therefore we were attaching more importance on the quality of development rather than the rate and speed of development. So as a result, we're seeing a shift away from our focus on a GDP figure, but instead on the kind of comprehensive reform and opening up that we can do to create more growth regions in the economy. So last year, we were already seeing not a very specific GDP figure, but a range of growth. And also last year, we were already seeing how the government is attaching a lot more importance to policies that would affect people's livelihood. Last year, it was the first time that the government set employment policies as a priority, almost on par, actually exactly on par with microeconomic policies like fiscal policy and monetary policy. And this year, obviously, due to the COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of businesses, especially small and medium businesses, having a lot of challenges. And therefore, this year, we are no longer setting a specific growth target, according to Premier Li Keqiang, as he presented the government work report to the NPC plenum. And therefore, he's arguing that by not setting a very specific growth target, it is not putting the pressure on regional governments to place a lot of a focus on the economic figure, but instead it is a reminder that regional governments should place more focus on ensuring that people have the basic means to a livelihood in the aftermath of COVID-19. So a lot of measures will be targeted at promoting employment. For instance, like we said earlier, a lot of these government policies are targeted at, for instance, expanding the government deficit. The deficit to GDP ratio was, according to Premier Li Keqiang, to grow to 3.6. And also, the central government is expanding the deficit by 1 trillion yuan. And meanwhile, it is issuing a coronavirus bond to gather another 1 trillion yuan in total. And that will make, like we said earlier, 2 trillion yuan in total, which will go directly to regional governments and hopefully to right down to the prefecture and county level, which will in turn make use of the money to provide all kinds of alleviation projects. And the government work report is just one of the issues on the agenda. Meanwhile, yes, all right, we just received a notice that we should, well, obviously our friendly sister organization, Cheaptoyman, is also covering on the major event. And let's switch over to their side and let's see. There's clearly a panel discussion going on here. Let's hear it.
Housing funds on, but that's equivalent to more than 40% of salaries. So this give a big burden to the enterprise. Now reduce refunding of those funds to the enterprise, and the enterprise is surviving, then the job will keeping that. I think that's one very important measure, but this is not enough. And government also have many others. For example, these funds also using to doing a training stuff, and those people may out of a job. Then right away government pay the money and give a training, pay some subsidies, and those people can maintain in their job. And also the consumption. Now many local governments have this called a consumption coupon. And with this coupon, people buy more, the supply, demand side increase, and enterprises can sell their product, and job is keeping that. So all the measures have to bundling together.
And Professor Wang, do you expect stronger government and private sector partnerships in terms of spurring job creation this year? Because earlier we saw this very interesting campaign where the government paired up with the private sector in 100 days, creating over 10 million jobs, massive jobs. Posting online on the Ministry of Human Resources. Do you think we'll see stronger partnerships like that going forward?
We'll definitely see more partnerships between the government and the private sector, and this has been going on for a few years now. And after the pandemic, the process has been accelerated because now a lot of funding comes from the government in order to heal the economic revival situation. And given that now our priority has been partly going to the soft infrastructure and the high technology sector, and it turns out that most of the companies many of these leading companies in the sector are private companies. So it only makes sense that the funding is being taken advantage of by the private sector in order to roll out more progress in the high technology development. And all of that obviously is going to help generate more jobs opportunities for the millions of graduates coming out of college every year, and many of whom study technology and science majors will have better job opportunities in the Chinese job market.
And yeah, of course, to better push economic growth, President Xi Jinping stressed the efforts in promoting innovation in science and technology. And gentlemen, as we speak, we are watching live feed from the Great Hall of the People for the closing session of the CPPCC.
The third session of the 13th Congress of the CPPCC has completed all its agendas, and the conference is about to conclude. This conference is convened at a time when China has secured major strategic outcomes in the battle against Covid-19 and is entering the crucial stage of completing the construction of a well-off society. CPC General Secretary, President, and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Xi Jinping, joined other leaders and discussed national issues with all the deputies and members. Despite the shortened schedule, fast pace, and tight agenda of the conference, all members have deliberated over various proposals and engaged in consultative discussions in a high standard, high benchmark, and high efficiency manner. Members have also shared proposals and consolidated their consensus on promoting routine epidemic control and promoting social and economic development and achieving the targets of full elimination of poverty. This is a full reflection of the important role of the CPPCC in national governance. And this conference is one of democracy, unity, practicality, and progress. This year is a crucial one for the two centenary goals. An extraordinary year on a journey of the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The People's Consultative Conference should bear in mind the strategic trend of China's national rejuvenation, as well as the fact that the world today undergoes unprecedented changes. All members must engage in real actions in serving the great cause of the party and the state. We must gain strength and confidence from our great fight against the epidemic. Thanks to the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and the united and unremitting efforts and of the whole nation, China has withstood the common crisis facing the mankind and left a heroic record in the history of mankind's battle against infectious disease. The various democratic parties of the CPPCC and people of all ethnic groups in China have gained a more comprehensive and in-depth understanding over the course of this tough battle on the original mission of the Communist Party of China and its political philosophy of putting the people in the first place. We have also witnessed the advantages of the socialist path, theory, system, and culture of Chinese characteristics, as well as China's overall strength and its solid economic strength. As long as we further consolidate the four awarenesses, boost the four confidences, and the two maintenances, as long as we further promote the unity of the people of all ethnic groups in China and prepare for all sorts of risks with hard work and zeal actions, then we will definitely be capable of overcoming all sorts of hardships.
We must focus on our target and improve our ability to carry out the duties and improve our work efficiency. The more complicated the situation, the more daunting the task, the more we need the CPPCC to combine a practical work style and the ability of carrying out duties. We must prevent and overcome the practice of formalities for formality's sake and bureaucracy. We must ensure our proposal is valuable and our consensus is effective. We must improve our work conduct, adopt a problem-oriented approach, and oppose formalities. We must also oppose investigation that addresses only the surface problems instead of the root causes. We must avoid big talk and small walk in our advisory service. We must ensure good work conduct in order to live up to our responsibilities. We must improve our ability in fulfilling duties and improve our fundamental skills as consultative bodies. We must read more extensively and select better reading materials and try to be good readers so as to grasp the law of advisory work and the methods for consultation. We must harness internet, big data, and other modern technologies to be able to table more forward-looking and accurate proposals and build consensus in a more targeted and effective manner. This will help us win the battle on eliminating poverty and complete the building of a moderately prosperous society in all respects, ensure stability on 6 fronts, and maintain security in 6 areas, and plan for the 14th 5-year period, as well as for strength and confidence from our people. We must play our part and make due contributions to implementing the Chinese way of democracy. As General Secretary Xi Jinping in the National Committee Working Meeting of CPPCC spoke positively of the unique advantages of the CPPCC system, pointing out that the Chinese way of democracy is a democracy that works in China and works well in China. As a way of political organization and democracy led by CPPCC has the advantage of socialist consultative democracy. It is able to organize all party groups and the people from all walks of life to discuss national policies and provide advisory service as well as to build consensus. It boosts the synergy of the CPC leadership and multi-party cooperation. It combines the full exercise of democracy and the practice of correct centralism and orderly political participation in China. It promotes not only unity but also implementing of tasks It is an authentic, constructive people's democracy that is rooted in the soil of the Chinese society. The specialties and advantages of the Chinese way of democracy has played an important part in the national governance in China. We need to improve the system efficacy of the CPPCC advisory bodies. We must promote the building of a political community based on the common political basis and common aspirations and the shared fundamental interests, which will contribute and provide a stronger impetus to the national governance.